Welcome to this exciting session on mastering advanced features in JavaScript. Today, we're diving deep into two powerful concepts: optional chaining and Nullish coalescing. First up, I'll introduce you to optional chaining, a neat way to safely access nested properties without risking a runtime error. We'll see practical examples of how it can simplify your code. Next, we'll explore Nullish coalescing, which helps us handle null or undefined values more elegantly. You'll get hands-on with implementing these in real code. We'll also cover best practices and discuss some common use cases. By the end, you'll have a solid grasp of how to leverage these features effectively. And finally, we'll open it up for any questions you might have. So let's get started. Hello, everyone. Today we're diving into the world of JavaScript with an incredibly useful feature called optional chaining. It's perfect for safely navigating through deeply nested object properties without running into errors. For example, imagine you have an object like this. To access the address safely, you would use optional chaining. If any part of that chain is null or undefined, it will return undefined instead of throwing an error. This makes your code cleaner and more robust when dealing with complex data structures and API responses. It's like saying, try to get this property for me, but if you can't find it, just give me back undefined. Pretty neat, huh? Let's see how we can use this in our code next. Hey there, welcome back to our tutorial series on JavaScript. Today we're diving into an essential feature called Nullish coalescing. This handy operator helps us avoid some common pitfalls when dealing with potentially missing values. For instance, if you try to access a property that might be or, it will automatically give you a default value instead of causing your code to break. It's like having a built-in safety net. The syntax is super simple. Just place the operator between your variable and the fallback value. For example, if we have an object with an optional property and want to ensure we always have a value, we can write it as. This not only makes our code more robust, but also cleaner and easier to read. So, next time you're working with possibly missing data in JavaScript, remember your trusty Nullish coalescing operator. Alright, let's dive into an example of using optional chaining in JavaScript. Optional chaining helps us safely access deeply nested properties without worrying about potential null or undefined values. Here's our object. Now, imagine we want to log the city from the user's address but are unsure if it might be missing. We can use optional chaining like this. If any of those properties, user, profile, or address, are undefined, JavaScript will stop and return undefined for the next property in the chain. But in our case, since none of them exist, it defaults to unknown city. So the output here would be, hello everyone, welcome back to our tutorial on JavaScript. Today we're diving into the world of handling null and undefined values with ease using Nullish coalescing. This handy feature uses the double question mark operator to provide a default value when dealing with potential null or undefined values. For example, if you have an object property that might be null or undefined, like so, if is null or undefined will be set to the string guessed. This way, you avoid potential errors and make your code cleaner. It's a best practice for handling optional and nullable data, making sure your application runs smoothly without crashing. Let's see more examples in our next slides. Stay tuned. Let's dive into an example using both optional chaining and Nullish coalescing. Here we have our user object, which includes a profile with nested address details. Now, let's see how these features work together to set default values in JavaScript. We want to get the city field from the address, but if it's missing or undefined, we should use unknown city as the fallback value. Here's our code. Welcome back, everyone. Let's dive into the best practices for working with complex data in JavaScript. First up, we have optional chaining. This handy feature helps you safely access nested properties without the risk of encountering an error if a property is or, for example, consider this structure. With optional chaining, you can write it as which will return if any part of that path is missing. Next, we have Nullish coalescing, which comes in handy when dealing with potential or values. This operator allows you to provide a fallback value if the current one isn't suitable. For instance, instead of writing something like this, you can use Nullish coalescing for cleaner code. These operators make your code more readable and maintainable by simplifying complex checks. Alright, let's wrap up this session on mastering JavaScript's advanced features. You've learned about two powerful operators, optional chaining and Nullish coalescing. Optional chaining lets you safely access nested properties without worrying about null or undefined values. For example, won't throw an error if or is missing. Nullish coalescing helps simplify your code by providing a default value when something is null or undefined. Like this. These tools make your JavaScript more robust and easier to maintain. Don't forget, you can combine them with traditional checks for even trickier situations. Embrace these practices to write cleaner, safer code.